Hello again. It's me, Will. Today, I have a short yet powerful episode of the Tap-In podcast for you. My guest is a friend and enabler of adventure, Jason Jagoda, who can be seen frequently vending food to those who attend various Central Texas festivals. Jason is an adamant supporter of the arts and the music scene in Austin, Texas, and I've had the pleasure of living with him and his family for about 2 years now. We've gone on a lot of amazing adventures together, including visiting Meow Wolf together, but mostly we've had more than a few amazing conversations just around our kitchen table over a cup of coffee, and for that very reason I've invited this man onto my podcast so that he could share a little bit of his passion with us. And I think that if you lend a ear to this person, then you'll surely see the intention in his heart and appreciate what he has to offer us through sharing his voice. So here we go, and thanks for tapping in once more. Hey Jason.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm really well today. It's been a long day, down to this moment. We just agreed to do like a moment of silence for some ambiguous, vague reason. So let's go ahead and do that before we get started.
It's good to be silent before you start talking a lot.
Okay. We're gonna think of everything we're gonna say in this brief moment of silence. Absolutely everything from the dust in the corners of the rooms that we'll talk about to the cleanest parts of the sinks in the buildings next door to the ideas that we know.
We could take a longer one and then edit it out later.
I don't know, dude. I think 4 hours was pretty long.
Oh.
4 hours of silence. Like, I think most people would have turned around at minute 15.
I would have. Actually, after about 6 minutes of that silence, Will, I thought you were going to cave. But then once you didn't, I pushed it for at least another 30 minutes. And then after it went to an hour, then it was just a test of fucking wills at that point.
Yeah.
4 hours, did you say? I stopped looking at the clock, damn it.
If I couldn't have edited this podcast, I just don't think I could have anybody who's listening to this endure that 4 hours of silence. So I just kind of cut it really short.
Right. Well, good editing. What they have to endure with a whole 8 seconds of it?
Well, honestly, it serves a good thing to talk about. Like, what's so good about talking? Why do you want it to happen sooner?
Well, I get a lot of crap about not talking sometimes, or taking too long to talk. Sometimes you have to collect your thoughts, and there's a lot of kids, I believe, that don't talk because, once again, they don't have anything good to say yet.
Yeah, it's like, what if the child could scream specifics at its toddler age? Like food.
Well, if some people are correct in what they're saying is that we're getting more and more enlightened and evolutionary, moving towards this higher path, quicker and quicker with every generation, then the children should be some of the most enlightened, smartest beings that we know. And
totally.
So much conversation is just nonsense and idle, just chatter. Maybe they're not saying anything because, once again, they realize the how important it is to choose your words carefully.
Yes, that is a very important thing. And honestly, it's something that gets brought up a lot, is that the art of communication has kind of become something that's more technologically interfaced than ever before. And like, I know I have family members who, you know, they use the technology as a viable and real way of communicating with people, but in what I've experienced is it really lacks any sort of real depth, you know, like, and I fucking hate using my thumbs to try to get information out of my body.
Oh, God, don't talk to me about the text message stuff. I refuse to text.
Do you have the voice thing?
To text. Oh, I mean, I don't use it. I just don't text. I just refuse to interface with it. But if I am going to text at any length, yes, I will prefer to use voice interface. But once again, then you're opening yourself up to being recorded, and then then we'll start talking about surveillance state stuff. But.
Yeah, that's a very interesting. Actually, that's a very interesting thing that I thought about before trying to do a podcast. Like, I was like, man, people will definitely be listening to this from all ends of culture and society, and I think that I have to, like, you know, it's not that I'm trying to throw people in front of the bus, but at this point, people have said crazier things than I've said on podcasts, and I've talked about death, rebirth, like hypnotic cycles of consciousness through psychedelic painting, or like hallucinogens, or the use of those, and then like things like, you know, things like that can be considered taboo, but I think that it's important to talk about those from a truthful perspective and not all one way or the other. You know, like what original, like, I guess you consider journalism to be was like kind of this thing about getting the truth out. And what do you think the best example of truth is than like talking heart to heart with somebody that you know pretty well? And I've known you for almost 2 years, dude, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not.
Well, and we talk about how like it's tough to communicate or have any of these things without all this. You can't communicate with your family without these devices or these technology in the way. We've had this conversation, or we've had semblances of conversations like this many times without the technology, but now the technology is there, and it seems like this little extra interface, but like you said, it is offering this ability for us to reach a whole bunch of people and them to weigh in on this. But like you've said, nothing that we are going to say or have said hasn't been said before. A very smart person once told me that there's no original thoughts.
You know what? That's interesting.
Everything has been said before, but it hasn't been said by you. That's the one thing, that everyone is unique, and our unique take on each individual thought makes them unique and original. And we had this conversation a couple days ago about how just the crazier the artists are, the more successful they are, and I beg that it's more of the more the artist engages in being them, because everyone is fucking crazy. Everyone at their core, we're all insane. We're all crazy. Yeah. When we really connect with the spark that is us, because we're all just this live wire of energy and creativity that is willing and able to do whatever when we really reach down to the core of our being, and we do it with love and admiration and blessings, and do it with like flair, and those artists that are able to do that and be themselves and be the craziest themselves that they can be.
Yeah,
the
that
ones
drama.
the ones that engage the public the most and create the most kind of spark, because it's people that see somebody being themselves. And then when someone's just trying to do that to get, eventually you see those people aren't authentic, that they die off fast. Fads, people come and go quick that try to ride that or try to ride some type of crazy aspect. But
Well, that's interesting. I was talking about the idea of the fad earlier and how, like, in the 60s / early 70s, the scene of LSD came on strong, and for the people who were a part of it, it was said that it never, they thought it was never going to end, until like later on.
Well, that's every trip. You think it's never going to end, but they always do abruptly.
Yes.
For most.
Oh, yeah, dude. It's always interesting when that happens and you're just kind of like back in yourself. But the weird concept that I thought about was, what if this technology thing is just another fad? And let me put it this way. I just watched that movie, Brick. Have you seen it lately?
And that's it.
It's a movie that was released in 2005. Okay, and basically, it's this dude who's just trying to figure something out. He's in high school, but he doesn't have a cell phone, and he doesn't use one until about 3/4 of the way through the movie. And if he had had the cell phone, would the movie have even been possible? But at the same time, it makes for a more dramatic plot.
And so that's why people write like period pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And why they have shows like Mad Men and different thing like that, where they can keep certain plot lines along, or they can keep certain storylines that just don't work anymore.
Yes.
Because you can't instantly communicate with people and verify the truth of something.
But what if the technology is just like a fad that, people realize that you can have a life without that kind of integration, or is that isolation at this point?
I mean, the people say that the kids are the ones that always you have to watch to know where things are going, because they always know what the hell is popular, and they talk about how the kids share everything, and they do all the stuff that they share about themselves on Facebook, and people talk about the police state. We're talking about how much you share of yourself, and kids share everything, and almost
these days, yeah.
And so are we getting to, and they do it all through this technology, but I've always said that this is the prep of getting us ready for the next evolution, which is that we're all going to be communicating more telepathically and empathically, and you're just going to know everything about everybody.
That's a very extreme point of view. Let me think.
This is like the evolutionary prep for the whole consciousness of the planet to get ready for that.
That's a huge belief to have, man.
Well, so many people already have bought into the idea that they are under surveillance all the time, that all their devices are listening to them, that all their devices are recording them.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I know people like that, but then they act like that's not happening sometimes, and it's kind of like, are we just broken at this point?
Well, like I said, I think it's something about prepping the consciousness for this new evolution and the consciousness of the species that may be on the horizon, in which telepathic communication is more prevalent. And
this is a perfect segue into this idea I had about there being mental exercises you can do to create something like speed bumps from the communication in the future, and that would be considered your like firewall or your privacy. You know what I mean? Have you ever just got into a deep thought about...
You're talking about meditating about your future self being protected from psychic attack? Is that
from psychic osmosis?
Yeah.
Because if you are resistant to the idea of all thoughts being, or like, having being integrated completely into what is the Akashic record in essence, right? Just like all knowledge all the time, then you know, because you're conservative and you want privacy or something like that, then you'd have to do some sort of like mind jujitsu to, like, you know, have some sort of like Smith-like character to prevent, you know, like anomalies like full on like awakening, or, you know, what could be considered ultimate creativity.
What is the purpose of everyone's thoughts and ideas, and is there like some type of ultimate personal truth that only you are able, you and God, or you and nobody else are privy to, and so that that, like you said, or is it something that everything gets uploaded to some Akashic record, or there's some footprint of you somewhere that is the embodiment of everything you've ever thought and everything you've ever experienced in this little lifetime.
And see, that sounds a little more like karma, though.
Well, not karma per se, as it's just a record. Like, you live your life, you experience life, and you're there to just live it.
Excuse
every
me.
little experience you have, every little sneeze that you have.
That was a big sneeze.
Every experience, just is just that, an experience, and you are the recording device experiencing it all for everyone, and that basically that lessons that you learn in your life and things that you experience are done for us all, not just for you, that you're a little device that is here experiencing all this for the collective of us, and then when we're outside of this experiment or timeline or whatever, we get to go and have access to that experience. Only one of us has to learn the lesson for all of us to get it.
And I guess that's why music is so cool, because it's kind of like a given that people are connected to music, but you can almost like drop your propaganda in the music, and if somebody hears it and it relates to it, then that's like a neural connection, right? And like what you're talking about essentially is like being one part of a big brain, or like an organism that is experiencing itself from the outside looking in, and that's interesting. Or is that about right? Does that sound about what you're talking about? Like, is there a more specific experience that you're having?
No, I mean, it's just, I mean, the key focus of what I'm talking about in that particular realm is that you are correct in your assumption and your thing about, like you said, your resistance. You're talking about originally your resistance, the idea of the osmosis to this hive mind.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. That
you didn't want to. It
sounds like a horror movie when you put it like that.
Exactly, like the Borg in Star Trek or whatever. Eventually, there's going to be, everyone will be assimilated, but it's not like that. It's not like some cold, lifeless thing that doesn't want. We want everybody to conform or whatever. It's more that everyone is going to embrace and love the uniqueness that is you, so much so like these artists who right now we put on a fucking pedestal that everyone adores and everyone loves because they are being the unique them. They're expressing themselves fully and they're being adored by everyone because that we love someone to pieces when they're going through rough shit and when they're going through great stuff. And sometimes we love to hate them too when we are envious or whatever, so we get triggered.
So that's interesting. So love to hate somebody. Like, I hope you don't mind if I just kind of
go ahead.
ask you something about that concept, because typically love-hate is thought of the two sides of the, two polar opposites, but is hate contained within love? Or, I guess a better analyzation of that is like, is hate a part of love, or is it able to be contained within the spectrum of love?
Well, I think it's more of like a pleasure and pain kind of thing. Like, love is, I don't think love has an opposite. Like, there is not love-hate, even though people use that love-hate dichotomy.
I really like that. I really do.
It's more of a pleasure and pain kind of thing that are the prime drivers and movers beyond love and hate. Because love is more, it's a little bigger than people. I mean, love is the creative force. Maybe love and death are opposites. I don't even know if that,
See, the extreme you're speaking of sounds like love isn't even like a quantum of like large or big. It's more of like a thing of is or isn't.
Well, yeah, it's like what was it? I liked how I can't remember this philosopher or somebody that was explaining what love is. Love is the receiving, and is it light? Oh yeah, light. Light and love have this kind of like dichotomy.
Yeah, because light is the lightest thing in the universe according to science that we know of. Like, it moves faster than anything. Like, after it starts moving, it accelerates to the fastest speed that we can comprehend as humans on this dimension. I remember talking about this earlier when we moved in, and how that linguistically, love is light. If you translate it however you want, you can use your words to work your way around how inside of your heart, when you love somebody, it's like you're seeing a light in them that's also within you, and that's what namaste means. And interesting enough that we land on the subject of love, because it seems to be something that a lot of people should be talking about today, but it's an awkward thing, and maybe it's because you're my roommate, so we've kind of tried to get the idea of love in our household to flourish truly, and I've become pretty happy with the results of that. Let me just say, I definitely have cultivated a deep love for you and the family that you have here. Ups and downs, it's
Well, everyone has their own idea, once again, of love, or also and what family is, or what, selective family. A lot of people have selective family, or their family, their friends.
Their family? That sounds like a weird, like a weird computer program. Framly.
Yeah, that's a
download Framly now.
Framly's a genism. She used to use that one.
Oh, a genism. That also sounds like a interesting application, but you know what? The love that you have expressed for your friend Jen in the past is something that's remarkable. And I remember when I first moved into this household, you like to talk about Jen quite a bit. But it was always interesting, and it was always seeming as if there was an underlying message or moral to every story that you told, and I think that...
Well, because I've been just crafting this tale for a while, and I've known that I have to craft this tale about Jen.
Why?
Well, because she told me to, and I'm a good boy, I do what I'm told, for the most part. Like,
okay.
I was thinking about that earlier today. Like, like if you tell me to do something, I will do it. I might take a long fucking time to do it, Jen, but I will do it eventually. Because Jen's the one who told me to marry my first wife, and I did.
Interesting. Okay, so let me just say something I remember about Jen, and just feel free to correct slash
Remember
interject.
a story I've told you about Jen?
Well, yeah, but it was like something that was very unique about her. Or, you know, it was the fact that she was inhabited by multiple personalities.
Well, yeah, that's part of Jen's story for sure.
I don't want to get too specific outside of like what you've experienced, knowing somebody who has experienced that as well, because I think that also on the cusp of understanding as well as love is being on the spectrum of mental illness, which is the thing these days.
Sure, but I mean, multiple personality, DID. It's a very fascinating subject in itself, and actually, before I knew Jen was a multiple, before I even met one of her first multiples, I was at the time attending Arizona State University, pursuing a double major in psychology and pre-med to be a psychiatrist, and I was fascinated by multiple personality stuff when I started reading about it, and just some of the extraordinary tales in a book by Michael Talbot. Michael Talbot? No, that's not his name. I can't remember. It's called Holographic Universe. Maybe it's Michael Talbot. Anyways, this particular book, there's a whole chapter on multiple personalities, and
So what do you mean by multiples?
Well, I mean, like I said, the of course the current term is DID, or dissociative identity disorder, because there's a lot of a loss of time with these people, and there's other the psychologists like to lump everything in like groups. They like to group everything, and so there's other dissociative diseases in which you lose time, and you lose and so they don't want to lump it in with that one. So it got moved from multiple personality to dissociative identity disorder, and because a lot of the times these people will lose the time. Their alters are so separate and compartmentalized that they're not allowed to know when other alter takes over. And like when an alter would take over, like the whole body physically will change. It's
like their person. It's like it's a different person, right?
Correct. Like I said, in this book by Talbot, he describes multiples who have their body chemistry changes. Like they had one that they tested. This multiple was tested, and they had 14 multiple personalities, and like 8 of the 14 personalities were allergic to orange juice, and the other ones weren't. It's just like weird stuff like that. Like there's unexplained physical changes that happen when these multiples take over.
And the reason I bring this up is because it seems to me that sort of being, like the fact that exists within nature, alludes to the reality of metaphysical interactions on this, in this life. You know what I mean?
Well, like I said, it opens up definitely to some type of...
Like consciousness moves. It's like something that flows from one thing to another.
Sure, for sure. I mean, if anything will show you that like your consciousness can be one place and gone and here the next. And I mean, it definitely rocked me when the first time that I was confronted with Jennifer and her multiples, and the first time I met the first one, and this is a woman who I had known for years. I mean, I had known her for maybe 8 years before I first saw her, and according to her, she hadn't seen this particular multiple in 15 or something.
Oh, wow.
And maybe had one other incident of another one of her multiples that I had met. I mean, I eventually met 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 different multiples from Jen, and a wide variances of stories. I mean, one of them being that this woman who thought she was the last thing she remembers before being in Jen's body and being in Jen's universe was being a Scottish woman from like the 17th century.
Interesting.
And she was drowned by her husband, and she was in her mid-30s or some such, and that's it.
And Jen knew how to swim.
Well, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to get that straight. That Jennifer knew how to swim, but then...
No, this woman was drowned like...
But then Patty was drowned.
Molly, I think her name was.
Oh, man.
You were close. I mean, you knew it had to be some type of Scottish name, so Patty was a good guess, but it was Molly.
Well, the reason I bring this up, I mean, I have a real specific reason on my heart. That's because, since you knew this person, you had to have interacted with that kind of situation on more than one occasion. You know, more than a dozen times, right?
Did I meet with her multiples? Yeah. I mean, I met with one of her multiples many, yeah.
At least once for each one, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah. But I mean, and a few of them on multiple occasions.
Oh, so a few multiples multiple times.
Correct. And
all right, so if you just multiply
then I had one
multiple by the other multiple, multiply, I don't know. I'm just goofing around right now. Okay, so let me just say, kind of sidetracked. Where did you go inside yourself to deal with that kind of thing? Did you know that kind of situation was coming about when, you know, was it more of like a morphing into this kind of thing, or was it like a light switch?
I mean, once again, looking into the research, if you look into the research on it, almost 95% are 95 to 98%, depending upon the study, of multiples are super early sexual molestation.
Oh, goodness.
And so what happens is these personalities come in to take the abuse. Mainstream science likes to create the idea that the brain is fractured, and because the abuse is so horrible that the brain's fractured, and because of that, these things are created. And I would like to submit that what happens is, because this abuse is so heinous, that these beings come in to like take the brunt of the abuse, because of the multiples, like I said, that showed up. 2 of them happened to say they were basically aliens, that they came from some other dimension to handle this. And so,
what?
And like I said, and one said she was this Scottish woman from the 17th century. And so it's some type of other consciousness. But when I talked to one of them about it at one particular time, about if they were really all the same person, because I have a very different worldview when it comes to the idea of how reincarnation works, where instead of reincarnation being like a linear thing, if time really doesn't mean anything, then you should be able to retroactively reincarnate into somebody from the past, or currently living multiple lives. And so I was wondering if possibly, I asked one time possibly if that was kind of what was going on with these beings, or these personalities, or all these alters, if they were all just one of the same.
That's so interesting that the term is alter, because that's kind of like it's kind of like what's happening with the body, whereas you're, being voided of your identity and then inhabited by a sort of ghost, like a real possession of sorts. And
when you asked about if it would just happen like all of a sudden, I mean, there was an arrangement. Okay, like I said, there certain alters. I mean, especially if you find people that have had full integration, because it does happen that some of these people gained full awareness of all the personalities and all the people, and Jen was able to do as much as well on her own before she passed away. She had integrated all of the multiples that she had.
That's so interesting.
What happens is that
she assimilated them.
Correct, and when she did, she gained back like the memories, or she increased, like, because what would happen with these, and the difficulty of doing some of these integrations for these people is to integrate is to gain back all of the memories. And so once again, why are they there? They're there because the earliest memories these people came in to take was this horrific abuse of these children. And so that's the tough shit that they've got to work through. These peoples that are multiples have got to go back and relive all of this heinous abuse, because they never really experienced it.
Right.
The multiples experienced it, and they have no memory of it. And so in order to reintegrate and be a whole person, they have to take that alter self of them and bring them into their entire consciousness. And in order to do that, they have to assimilate all these memories.
Fascinating.
It was a rough time for Jen to do it. Of course, it wasn't an easy thing. And she would describe it. That was actually the beginning of knowing that she was on this path towards integration, even before her first alter showed up, is because she was reliving. She was telling me that this is what would happen. She was like driving down the road, and then all of a sudden she would just be gone, and she would be reliving this horrible trauma from her youth, this horrific trauma, this like she was really there. She's like, it wasn't a memory, it was like I was reliving the whole damn thing all over again. And then when that was over, all of a sudden, boom, I see myself driving the car down the road, and I'm hovering above my body, floating above it, watching myself driving, and I slowly drift into my body, into myself as I'm driving down the road, and then, bam, I'm back into my body. And at that moment, I'm still flush with all of the emotion and that knowledge of that experience I just had of this. And she says it's just like, she's like, I had to pull over.
That sounds like
immediately.
That sounds like a bad DMT trip.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like, I've heard of people having out-of-body experiences on high doses of LSD and DMT, a lot like that, but not so horrific. Like, thank God that wasn't how they left this planet, right?
Sure, but I imagine that was one of her alters took over and was driving on her way in.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, Jason, do you think that it's a good idea to remember everything all at once? Like, if you could do that, would you push the button that would grant you?
No, I think, like I said, I'm one of the adherents of the axiom that you can't handle the truth, meaning such that truth only serves those who are ready for it, and truth will show up when you are ready to hear it. And so trying to push the truth is just is folly. And truth resonates, and you'll know, and if you don't, then that's just part of the game. Sometimes you really think someone is being truthful to you, and then they're just fucking with you. I mean, and you're a master at that, because you're a really likable, lovable guy, Will, and many fucking times I have fallen for your bullshit, because Will likes to trick people and whatever. He will say like the most ridiculous shit just to like be funny.
Jason, don't let all my secrets out.
Yeah, but you will. But you're like, but you are the most honest, trustworthy, believable person, and that's why that fucking shtick works.
Oh, it's a little like the boy who cried wolf, honestly.
Yeah,
and I know a few people like that who like. My friend just made a post on Facebook, Nick, about how people think he's so funny that he could like crash a gas truck into a nursery, and people would be like, "Oh, you are so funny. You're so silly. Oh, silly you." But honestly, like, I try not to do that as much as I have the ability to. Like, that feels like a dark magic, like a kind of like a fog spell that I cast over people, and then like it's kind of like taking the rug out from somebody mentally, and while they're distracted, I can like say something that's like, you know, logical somewhat. Then people are like, oh, I guess that's a good interaction, right? And is it not?
It's great. I think it's great. Like I said, I think you got to play to your strengths, and you exude this trustworthiness. And so if you're interacting, because I think it's something that really works well with like that first kind of impression.
Well, thank you, Jason. That means a lot. I trust you too.
Yeah.
Really, that's why I've lived here for so long.
Well, yeah, I mean, once again, that's why, I mean, we're pretty two trustworthy people, and,
don't trust me all the way. I'm not perfect.
Yeah,
like,
well, I know, but
I make mistakes like everyone.
That gets you in trouble, because you end up, trusting too much sometimes, but...
like Ram Dass says, trust in God, but tie up your camel. Right, I think about that a lot. You know, like locking the car. That's what that is. You know, lock your car. Wear underwear. Clean underwear. Wear clean underwear.
Tying your camel, I mean, the camel just will fucking walk off on its own, I would think.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, I think that's got a double meaning to it. I mean, I don't think that's...
Yeah, well, also, like, somebody could just take it, or
because
a huge list of things. It could spontaneously explode.
But it is like, just take care of your shit, maybe. That's like...
I don't know, dude. Camels explode unless you put those, like, flame retardant ropes upon them. I'm just joking. Man, we kind of went off on a tangent. It's fun, right? It's fun just talking. And you know what? I'm trying to say I learned something, but you know what, man?
I'm sure. I mean, there's no way if you've learned something beyond what you've gleaned in this conversation, then
it's like if you've no, like what we've talked about so far, or should I say thus far, is this interesting relationship you've had with your old friend. And something I really wanted to like point at is that kind of behavior that you must have had to be with, you know, you had to have you had to have given off a certain behavior that was not only compassionate but somewhat acrobatic in terms of how you could support somebody like that, because you knew them for a minute before.
Well, yeah, when you talk about the love-hate, we were talking about that before, of that whole love-hate dichotomy, pleasure and pain. Listen, there was a part of me that felt good helping Jen because nobody else would, and I was really the only person she had to help, because they would have locked her up if she'd have told anybody else what was going on with her. They would have locked her up, for sure, or had her on a heavy dose of meds really quickly. I mean, I was the only outlet she had, and then the burden of that at the time was really rough, especially for...
How noble.
Noble. I was just trying to...
You think anybody would have done that?
There's probably not too many who would have. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. There's putting up with Jen and putting up with this, and there's sometimes I got stretched pretty freaking thin. I had... like I said, at the time, I was just an undergrad at Arizona State, and I had some peers. I had a couple friends, this girl that I was dating at the time, who were both psychology students as well, and both going to go into practice to be therapists. And at one time, I just told them, I am meeting with Jennifer, trying to help her through some stuff. Like, I didn't get into details. All I just said, basically getting rough. So they just probably assumed it was probably something sexual. We'll take a cut.
There you have it, folks. The first half of the exciting story of the relationship between Jason and his good friend Jennifer. We'll have that second part of this episode soon to come. Let me just say, I've heard it and it's got so many twists and turns that it'll leave you wondering why people worry about the simple things in their life in the first place. And I, for one, really commend Jason for dedicating his time to getting to know somebody this well. If only we could all tap into somebody with such compassion, it could mean the difference between 4 generations to follow us and 8 generations to follow us. It's as simple as that. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. In the meantime, tap in, open up, and art on.